Hello and welcome to lesson number 34, and in today's lesson we'll discuss batch manufacturing records, or BMRs as they're commonly known. Some of the objectives or the outcomes of this lesson are listed below. They include the definition of what a BMR is, along with an introduction of why we use batch manufacturing records, the documentation associated with BMRs, and the flow of a BMR from its initial creation to its final sign-off or approval in QA, and how quality assurance review and approve batch manufacturing records before product is released, commercial product leaves the site, and finally a conclusion. This is the definition of batch manufacturing records. The batch manufacturing record, or the BMR, is the necessary quality and GMP documentation for tracing the complete cycle of manufacturing batch or manufacturing lots of batches. On the next slide, we just give a further introduction to BMRs, and the batch manufacturing records should be prepared for every intermediate and API formulation and should include complete information relating to the manufacturing and control of each of those batches. The batch manufacturing record should be checked before issuance to ensure that it's the correct version and it's legible and accurate, and it gives a good, concise reproduction of the appropriate master production instructions. Before any processing begins, a check should be performed and recorded to ensure that the equipment and workstations are clear of previous products. Documents or materials not required for the planned process are removed from the area, and that the equipment is clean and suitable for use before production begins. These records should be numbered with a unique batch or identification number and dated and signed once they're issued. So some of the documentation then associated with compiling a BMR are listed here. Completion of each significant step in the BMR should include dates and, where appropriate, the times that unit operations are carried out. So the operator carrying out the unit operation will normally sign, initial it, and date when it occurred, along with the signature of the second person verifier, or the person checking that operation. Identity of major equipment should be included, like reactors or mills or any other drying equipment that could be used. Actual results recorded for critical process parameters need to be entered into your BMR. Any sampling that was performed, whether it's inline, at-line or offline sampling, needs to be recorded along with the quantities of samples taken and detailed in the BMR. Specific identification of each batch, including weights, measures and batch numbers of raw materials, intermediates or any reprocessed material used during the manufacturing. Signatures of the persons performing and directly supervising or checking each critical step in the operation needs to be included. In-process testing or laboratory testing, the results need to be included in the BMR, along with the actual yield at appropriate phases or times in the process needs to be included. So continuing on, description of packaging and labelling must be detailed in your BMR, along with including representative labels where possible. Normally labels that are put on the external packaging of commercial material is included in the BMR. Any deviations noted along with its evaluation and investigation conducted, or reference to that investigation if that raw data is stored elsewhere. A decision for the release or rejection of the batch is included with the date and the signature of the person responsible for making that decision, and that's normally a QP or qualified person in the API industry. The results of the release testing need to be included in your BMR. Production and quality control records should be reviewed as part of the approval process of batch release. Any divergence or failure of a batch to meet its specifications should be thoroughly investigated, and the investigation should, if necessary, extend to other batches of the same product or other products that may have been associated with a specific failure or discrepancy. So here we look at the chain of custody, or the flow of the batch manufacturing record from the moment it's approved or generated. So the first place it will go to is the production area, where the production manager checks the BMR for consistency and accuracy and signs the front page, normally signs and dates the front page of the BMR. The calculation sheet should be forwarded to the stores or the warehouse for entry of the relevant raw materials or key starting material quantities, as well as their assay values, etc. After the relevant entry, the warehouse will forward the sheet to the production department, where the production chemist will fill in the equipment status details, where line clearance details were recorded, etc. for each piece of equipment. The operator fills in any part of the reaction that requires a particular step. The operator will fill in the start time and the end time of that operation, and that second person verified by either a second operator or the supervisor in charge at the time. After completion of every reaction in each of the particular reaction steps, the intermediate should be sent to the QC laboratory for testing. It's tested for reaction completion, which is normally example, loss on drying if we're looking for particular water content, or maybe GC for gas content or solvent content. After final product is obtained, it's sent to the QC lab for full final product testing. And the analytical report then is completed and returned to the attached to the batch manufacturing record. And finally, the batch manufacturing record is normally sent to the QA department for review and approval. So once it's received by the QA department, it's their responsibility to review the entire batch manufacturing record, which is quite a large document at this stage, and then they approve and subsequently release the material. So the steps involved in a high-level overview of batch review and approval is listed below. So the batch number is firstly checked by the quality assurance department to make sure it tallies with the master record. They review the analytical report of all raw materials attached. They review the equipment cleaning record for each piece of equipment, along with the relevance of the line clearance that was carried out by QC before production started. They review any deviations that were performed and look at the deviation reports. Obviously, they make a call on the significance of the deviation in respect to the process and determine if any other batches were affected by any deviations. They check the quantity of solvent recovery in the process. Recovery should be proper and should be complete and within defined limits. They check the packaging record for the dry packing record material and check the sample that's included within the BMR. They review the analytical report of the finished product testing generated by the QC department, make sure everything is within the specification and there's no deviations in the final product testing. Finally, attach the review report with specific numbers by the QA department, which is signed by the QA manager. And if everything looks fine, the batch is then approved and is allowed to be released or dispatched off-site. The record is then archived or retained by the quality assurance department. And if anybody needs a copy of the BMR going forward, they should be given a controlled copy with permission from the QA manager. Every batch manufacturing record should be saved for a minimum of 5 years from the date of manufacture. So finally, as a conclusion, we can conclude that the process of review of batch manufacturing records is very critical in a pharmaceutical manufacturing firm. By reviewing batch manufacturing records, QA and operations have the opportunity to catch any errors before the product is released for public use or public sale. So it minimises the chance of defective product leaving the site. These reviews can save the company thousands of pounds in fines, and they ensure, by reviewing a BMR, you're ensuring constant and consistent compliance with regulatory requirements with respect to manufacture of API material. The types of records and the documents associated with manufacture of API material is well defined, and so it makes it easier to review or ensure compliance with regulatory guidelines when you're reviewing batch manufacturing records. Adequate review of BMR serves two important purposes, and the first is to satisfy regulatory requirements, and the second then is to give feedback to the operations group or the production group. So if a consistent error is noted throughout a BMR, we could ask the question, are the operators adequately trained, or do the SOPs require clarification or updating if the errors are associated with a particular operation? And finally, batch manufacturing review carried out by approved reviewers is a very valuable asset to the QA department, because it's the final sign-off before your product leaves site. And that's the last slide. Thank you for listening.